the name of the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Please have a seat. Just a reminder that with the second or fourth sermons about hope, I'm going to introduce each sermon with the same sentence. People face difficulties and pain all through life. What we hope for may not come to pass, but we can be transformed as we trust in the power of Jesus to hope. First of all, last week, the hope that continues to choose life, that hope that's tenacious in seeking where the life is in something, where the goodness is. Talked about the way that brambles persist in finding their way to the light. And today we're looking at the flip side of that hope is something which resists and fights against evil. Now, when you hear the word evil in the press or the media, usually it's something dramatic, that evil pedophile or that evil regime. It's a big, spectacular thing that's quite far removed from us. And I chose a passage from James this morning, because James brings it all quite home and quite close to home, and he's got quite a turn of phrase. I'm going to be looking at three phrases of James's, which are quite colourful, but quite thought-provoking, I'm hoping. And my plan is this morning to show, as regards evil, how hope is very important in the fight against evil. Just as I said, I woke up quite early this morning, maybe about 5, and all the power was off in the house. All the power was off, and I was trying to figure out, the fuse box was fine, did everything I could and all that, and thankfully they were still asleep. And I was thinking, and I kind of started to work through, we can't do nothing without electricity. We can't even put the water on. We can't even get the gas boiler going. I have to go to the camper van and cook a wee stove, a wee cup of tea, all this kind of thing. And then thankfully, it all just kind of came on again about 6:30, and the doorbell went and all that. Just woke the dog up. Yeah. But it got me thinking that hope is a bit like electricity. If you ain't got it, it is really difficult to keep the lights on. Difficult to keep going. And I was using an illustration last week of the clag, of the way that the clouds come down in the mountains, and how we can allow the clag of circumstances and how we're feeling in our life to really blow out any sense of hope. So, I would say there are many different kinds of evil, right? But one of the reasons I'm a Christian is because I think the Christian faith has a very, really realistic take on human nature. It's got a really realistic understanding of the way that human nature keeps messing things up and why it does that, and also gives it, I think, a fairly healthy way forward. And I love the way that we always start our service with a confession. And of course, confessing things that we've done, but also the things that we haven't done that we should have done. And that's probably the area that we tend to err most in, not doing things we should have done that we haven't done. But in James's reading, he really gets right to the root of sin in our lives. And he has this wonderful phrase in that first paragraph in our reading, kind of second to third sentence down. He says, well, God doesn't tempt anybody. Don't blame God, he said. Because they used to do that in those days, you just blame the gods. If things went wrong, they would blame the gods. All right? Blame the gods. And then he said, each person is tempted when they are dragged away, this is the image, dragged away by their own desire and enticed. All right? Being dragged away by your own desire. I mean, it's a very evocative image. I said to Ina yesterday, as I was eating Victoria's sponge cake, I said to her, I need to really work on my impulse control, I said to her, as I was eating the cake. It's a bit late by then, But this image of being dragged away by your own desire is a very, very thought-provoking picture. And I think it's a very astute description of the way in which, for all of us, it would be different things. A flip switches, and off we go. And before we know it, we're running down a rabbit hole of some kind. And I think it's this awareness that we all have different triggers that can suddenly, before we know it, we're doing something we know we shouldn't be doing or whatever. Now, the really unfortunate thing is that the church has tended to overcompensate on this and said desire is bad. And desire is not bad. You can have a chat with Lewis after if you want to about that, but he will tell you that desire is perfectly okay as a psychologist, all right? Desire is an important part of being human. But there are desires that can lead to destructive habits. I think this is an incredibly powerful description of addiction. Incredibly powerful description of somebody who has an addiction. When their desires, when they're dragged away by their desires. And there's something about any of us who know, or people who are bearing dog work, people who are addicted, to know the road that we could be on if we're not careful. All right, so it's really important, I think, first off, to acknowledge that something that we are all these big evil words that are out there are things within us that we need to really pay attention to and keep on top of. All right? And the wonderful thing about groups like Al-Anon, Gamblers Anonymous, and so on, is that they support one another in these things. And this is where you see hope is so important. When somebody's caught in an addiction, and they have others around them who have been able to be sober or kept the faith, this tells them there is hope. But it means that that only works if there is openness and brokenness on each other's part, in which they say, listen, I've struggled with this as well, but I'm trying each day just to keep sober. And for somebody who's still struggling with alcohol, that gives them a wee lifeline. It's a wee bit of hope. And you can see how hope is so important in the fight against evil, this kind of stuff, which could snarl us up. But it requires an openness and a fragility and a transparency of relationship, which is saying, look, I've been where you are, I still haven't got it all together, but I'm just trying to get through each day. And so can you. And I don't want to spend too long on it, because there's other things I want to say this morning, and I haven't got a lot of time. But I think there's something for us all to take seriously here. What are the desires that can drag us away? What are the things that can come out of nowhere and we say things or do things that we really regret and we know we shouldn't be doing that? So it's really trying to see there are things in our lives, things in your lives that you may be struggling with, to know that there is hope, but you may need to talk to somebody about it, or you may need to talk to your partner about it and be honest and say, look, I'm really struggling with this. Is that all right? So I just want to kind of put that out there as something about the relationship between hope and evil, which is from the world of addiction, which is something that we can learn from. And I hope it's something we can be encouraged and strengthened by. Second colourful phrase of good old James is in the second paragraph, all right? Second paragraph, kind of second or third sentence down there. He said, therefore get rid of all moral filth. He's not pulling his punches, is he? And the evil that is so prevalent. Moral filth. Some of the old translations have sordidness. I love that word, sordidness. You put a double R in there if you can, you know? But there is that sense of this is stuff which is just not life-giving. This is part of a conversation, or you're reading something, you watch something and you're thinking, I don't want to watch this anymore. You put it off, or you should do. Well, I want to get out of this conversation because what's this gossip that's going on? It's just, so basically sordidness, moral filth, what it does is it undermines the goodness of God's creation, undermines the goodness of life. Anything that is good and beautiful and holy and pure, sordidness is just attacks it. It's like a corrosive substance. And we need to keep alert to that in how we speak. So one of the definitions I would say of evil, and this is why I have it in contradiction to hope here, is because I think evil has about it the smell of death. Now, it may not obviously be like that, because it can look really smart and really shiny and very attractive. But actually, over the long term, this will lead people down to a spiral which will take them away from all that is good and healthy and life-giving. In the previous paragraph, James has just said that each good and perfect gift comes from God, the Father of heavenly lights, who does not change like shifting shadows. It's a wonderful image that what James is saying, the good stuff in life. There is good stuff in life. And this is, again, one of these famous quotes from Lord of the Rings I bring up once a year. But one of the things for Sam was, why is Frodo was saying, what's the point of going on? What's the point of fighting all this stuff, And Sam said, because there is some goodness in the world and it's worth fighting for. There is some goodness in the world and it's worth fighting for. And what I would say to you is, given any particular conversation, anything you're reading or watching or even whatever you're up to, think, is this helping good stuff in the world or is it not? Just as a kind of litmus test. Because the boundary line can be quite faint sometimes. It can be quite difficult to, every sordid denominator is different, And I think my call to you as Christians is to be aware of, is what I'm part of here, is this healthy or not? I would say, when it comes to politics, and the politicization of Twitter and social media feeds and the algorithms and the stuff that goes on there, and the degeneration of the tone of conversation, there's a lot of this speaks to that, in which people have just got so accustomed to be able to speak in a very abrasive and aggressive way. And what we do really, and you see this, I think social media and the echo chambers allow us for that. Now, thank God, we really pray for people in politics who are trying to have a constructive conversation, who are trying to say what's good about things. But there is this kind of low-hanging fruit that people can just kind of go for in critiquing one another. So I think there is something also about our moral discourse which we need to be careful of, to be alert to. And that's why we need to support politicians and political activists and others. And whatever party, it's not a party political thing. It's just a kind of a vibe thing. What kind of vibe do we want in our politics? We want something that is healthy, constructive, can talk about difficult topics without going for the lowest common denominator and critiquing people. So there's something here about holding out for the good stuff. Now, hope by definition is something which has not yet arrived. And as Candy was reminding us last week, as Barack Obama's big phrase, hope, and they're trying to bring it back again. But hope is something for what has not yet arrived. So I would suggest that one of the greatest manifestations of evil or sin, in all honesty, is inertia. Inertia. It's just things just not shifting. It's just people just accepting what is wrong. One of the great insights of 20th century philosophers is that actually evil can be very, very banal. Evil can be incredibly banal. Evil can get lost within an institutional structure. I remember a very powerful video for asylum-seeking charity, and some people having a dream, and basically they were faced with this mountain of paperwork that just came flooding like an avalanche. And the government can sometimes put these mountains of paperwork there to make it deliberately difficult for people. They hope if they make it difficult enough, folk will just go away. And there's a banality of evil about that. It's not spectacularly evil, but it's institutional. I was talking with somebody just 2 days ago, talking about a situation they're in an institution they're part of, in which they said, all the people are good people, but the system is just rubbish. So I think we need to be alert to ways in which evil can take different forms, but the hope is to say, I'm just not going to accept that. I believe that there is a different way. And I'm conscious of the time, so I want to kind of finish with a wonderful story, which those of you who will be following the lecture will pick up on this, about the Moravians, German missionaries in the 1700s, who were really ahead of the curve in many, many different ways. And they formed a community in South Africa of different races for about 100 years, more or less, actually, in South Africa. And they had a wonderful name for it. I'll just get the name here. It was called, I'm not quite sure how to pronounce this actually, it's Genadinado. It's not, but it means Valley of Grace. It means Valley of Grace. It's this beautiful community called Valley of Grace, and it lived for about 100 years. People were self-sufficient, and these people had a vision for what could be. They were not willing to accept what was just there. And hope, by definition, does not say, it does not say, I'm just going to accept this as it is. It says, I believe there could be another way of doing this. and to fight for that and to work for it, even if it takes time, even if you never see it yourself, you know you're in a direction of travel that you may take the next generation there. But evil in its very comfortable forms can just say, well, you can't do much about it, just leave it alone, just keep your head down and go on with stuff. And Nelson Mandela didn't do that. And the apartheid authorities shut down this community in the 1950s after it had been going 100 years and tough folk out into the streets and they were having to fend for themselves. So when Mandela became president, and of course the hope, the vision he had of a South Africa that was free kept him going all those years, he renamed the presidential house, which had been Westbrook, to this wonderful Ganandanado. Oh God, I have to get something. But it's a beautiful bit. It means Valley of Grace. And Mandela chose this word because these people had held out a vision of hope, of what was possible. They didn't accept just what was there. And they said, we could do this together. And we had that wonderful second gradual hymn that grace blows all fear away. And something about grace and its freedom of grace, which takes away our fear, which gives us the courage to face evil and to fight against it in our own lives, in our community life, even within our congregation, to be people of grace and people of hope. To not accept what is, but to live for what might still be, the people of hope. To have a moment of silence now, just think about what you may be hoping for, and perhaps if there's anything particular form of evil or sin in your own life, or people around you that you know that you really want to trust God for.